backed elite.
Hello, everyone. More information is coming out as more Afghan terrorists arrested as migrants panic in fear of deportation and Trump halt Semitic seekers. Basically, there's a lot more going on here. There's a lot more evidence coming up about this going on and everything, and it's getting more and more realistic here. Also, I'm going to do another video on something different about thugs lynching an elderly white man for discussing their homies or something like that. I'll have that video after this one right here, so enjoy this video.
Afghan unit, and this right now shows some details where they operated in Afghanistan, but also the vetting process. Supposedly they went through biometric screenings, in-person interviews, which is very interesting, and Lochinwall's connection here. He was assigned to this O3 unit, recruited and trained by the CIA to fight against the Taliban. This group, also, Rebecca, known for their brutality and called death squads. So you take that last point there that I just said, right? That they're known as these death squads, quite brutal. And that this man also went through a one-on-one interviews so we understand. What's your takeaway there? Could something have been missed in that process?
Well, it's very disturbing, and this is such a tragedy. We're going to learn more, but I'm reminded that in 2011, an Afghan Air Force colonel walked into an office at North Kabul Airport and blew up 8 U.S. Air Force service members and a contractor. That was an ally. The risks here are just very, very large, and that's why I'm really glad the president is going to go and look at other cases, and we must keep an eye on this radicalization of Islam and this threat that frankly now is inside our borders.
You know, there's been reporting that those who knew the suspect when he was younger say that he had mental health issues because of what he witnessed in Afghanistan. So you got to wonder, without painting all of the people who are here from Afghanistan with one brush, whether or not there are others, though, who could possibly be suffering the same type of issues.
All right, so to come for us, new fallout after the deadly attack in the nation's capital, why some Afghans in America are now living in fear.
All right, guys, so we got to continue our coverage of President Trump's ramped up immigration crackdown. This is not new. It is just ramped up and put on steroids. And the reason why is because the president has decided that, you know what, we have a much bigger problem than just illegal immigration. Immigrants who are here in the country illegally on paper. We also have a problem with people who were let in the country legally but not properly vetted. Like, for example, a lot of the individuals that Biden let in the country from Afghanistan under Operation Allies Welcome. As we had one of these Afghanistan nationals murder a member of the National Guard. The other member of the National Guard that was shot is still in critical condition, okay? And we don't know what's going to happen with him, but I'm hoping and praying that he pulls through. And lo and behold, we have another Afghan national that was admitted via Operation Allies Welcome, who has been charged with making terroristic threats, according to DHS.
Well, this just in, we have a Fox News alert from Brooke Taylor. You won't believe this. DHS is confirming that an Afghan national was arrested Tuesday after posting a video of himself on TikTok indicating he was building a bomb with an intended target of the Fort Worth area. Mohammed Dawood Al-Okazai is charged at the state level with making a terroristic threat. According to DHS, listen to this. He came to the United States as part of Operation Allies Welcome. So here you have it. This happened Tuesday. Texas Department of Public Safety. This is a second Afghan national, second one this week. Operation Allies Welcome. He had a terror plot. We know it comes the same week that deranged individual, that alleged assassin, took out 2 of our heroic National Guard, came here on the same program, Operation Allies Welcome, a program that we were assured time and time again by Mayorkas, by Jen Psaki, by Joe Biden himself was safe and secure. But here we have a second data point in 1 week that it was not safe, it was not secure. And we've got to look very hard at this program as President Trump is vowing to make change.
Okay, apparently this guy who was led in the country by Biden, was making bomb threats, terror threats, and he has been arrested and charged. Now, this comes as the administration is taking dramatic measures in order to figure out what the hell is going on with immigration in this country, and that is why he has now paused claims for the people who are trying to come into the country on asylum.
Expected a flurry of new immigration decisions, not only targeting people from Afghanistan, but also halting all asylum decisions until further vetting can't be done.
The nonsense that the left gave us with this Operation Welcome Allies. Look, there was no vetting. If you think there was vetting, I have a bridge to sell you.
The Trump administration has now paused issuing visas for people traveling on Afghan passports, as well as stopped processing all immigration requests from the country. Now, the new directives do go beyond just Afghanistan. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that all asylum decisions will be put on hold until every single person is vetted and screened, while the status of green card holders from 19 countries of concern will be re-examined. Now, today on the international front, President Trump posted on Truth Social warning airlines, pilots, as well as drug dealers that airspace over Venezuela is closed after more than 20 U.S. military strikes.
Meanwhile, you have migrants from Afghanistan, from Somalia, from places that we've been talking about, who are claiming that they're living in fear, right? They are living in fear because of President Trump's immigration crackdown measures that he is currently turning up.
So I've been speaking with Afghans who are living in the US after an Afghan man was accused of shooting 2 National Guard members in Washington on Wednesday.
Who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth.
The Trump administration has said it will re-examine every single Afghan who came into the US under the Biden administration.
If they can't love our country, we don't want them.
So who are the Afghans that are impacted by this? Since the US withdrew from Afghanistan in 2021, tens of thousands of Afghans have been resettled in the US. That's according to the Migration Policy Institute. And many of those people worked with the US government over that 20-year war period. They're working as translators, as drivers, as fixers, as doctors, and their families came with them. The Biden administration said that they were fulfilling their promise not to leave any of these allies behind who'd actually helped with the US mission, and that all these applicants do have to go through a really rigorous and multi-layered screening process before being admitted into the US. I've spoken to some of these Afghans who are living in the US, and they told me that they thought their entire ordeal was going to be over when they were getting on those evacuation flights and coming to safety, coming to the US. And now they are terrified that their entire community is going to be targeted. I spoke to one Afghan family who told me they were living in real fear of, even leaving the house, of being separated from their children, of being deported back to Afghanistan where, it's now under Taliban rule and all their opportunities would be severely stunted.
On social media, the U.S. government announced, quote, effective immediately, processing of all immigration requests related to Afghan nationals is stopped indefinitely.
What we are now seeing is deeply concerning. Collective punishment based on identity or nationality.
Haris Mujaddadi is a longtime Afghan community activist in the Bay Area. He condemns the shooting, but says the backlash in cities like Fremont, home to one of the largest Afghan communities in the country, is already being felt.
I'm talking to family members and friends who are worried to go to a grocery store that might be Afghani. They're worried to go to the mosque. They're concerned that they might be rounded up.
Fremont's Afghan community has been a target before. In May, Afghans here legally on humanitarian parolee visas received a letter from the Department of Homeland Security telling them to go back. Earlier this month, Fremont officials confirmed ICE agents did door knocks in predominantly Afghan neighborhoods, but Professor Nolan Higdon says what the Trump administration is doing now is new.
To raise to the level of actually stopping people from coming to the country of people of that identity, that's a new escalation in terms of American history.
That escalation is what has many concerned. The Bay Area-based Project Anar, which provides Afghan Americans with legal services, issued a statement saying that refugees, quote, flee their homes because of conditions caused in part by U.S. foreign policy. This memorandum undermines the refugee program by wasting resources on rescreening those who have already gone through the highest level of vetting. California State Senator Aisha Wahab is one of the highest-ranking Afghan Americans in public office. Dr. Wahab says the U.S. immigration system is broken, but she won't allow her community to be scapegoated.
And I will hold every elected official accountable for how this is going to be utilized to harm all people that are literally seeking safety and justice and freedom and exploiting what is happening today just for their political gain.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? Allegedly, they are living in fear. They're living in fear because President Trump is cleaning up the immigration system, right? He's doing what Democrats claim they want to do, except they don't agree when President Trump does it. He's cleaning it up, right? He's saying, listen, we have to properly vet these people. We can't just be letting all these people into the country, granting asylum, allowing immigrants from, the third world to come into our country and not assimilate. And then we have all these problems, right? And that's what's happening in cities across the country, particularly, again, when you look at places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, where you have reports about the Somali community committing massive fraud operations where they're taking a bunch of welfare from the federal government, tax dollars, and is getting funneled to terrorist organizations in Somalia, right? And it's like, yeah, we can't tolerate that, okay? This is something that we have to crack down on. Okay, and a lot of people are upset about it. They're mad, they're boo-hoo-whining and crying. But ultimately, the reality is that it has to happen, right? In order to make America great again, we have to clean up the immigration problem. And a lot of that means sending these individuals back to where they're from, okay? And I know it sounds harsh. It's one of those things where, people get their feelings hurt. But that's just the reality. We've taken in too many people, and we got to figure it out, right? We got to figure out how to get some of these people out. It is what it is. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this guy complaining about, Republicans calling for some order to our immigration system.
All-out assault on Somali Americans. And I kid you not, it is coming from some of the highest elected officials to some of the local politicians and everywhere in between, and unelected people too. And here's my question. I was just watching Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida. Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, basically talking crap about Somalis. And mind you, probably Somalis make about, mind you, the Somali American number in the state of Florida is probably non-existent.
Doesn't matter. We're talking about on a national level. There's enough of them to be running a major city, right? To run the city of Minneapolis. And when there's that many of them that are running a major city, that's a problem, especially considering how, again, there's a giant welfare scam being run, okay, off the backs of taxpayers. I mean, they're big enough to have an impact on major elections. That's a problem.
Outside of spring break vacationers, right? They don't exist almost. But he basically says, listen,
illegal immigration is bad. Illegal immigration, no matter what, is good. And wait a minute. Now, I'm not saying any of it's that it's all bad or what, but is bringing 10 million people from like Somalia and dumping them into Georgia, is that good because it's legal? I think you have to think critically about what are we doing with an immigration policy, and is it benefiting the American people? Is it helping to promote a strong American culture? We should never bring people into this country who hate America. And
not only that, in a city of Minneapolis, the police chief, Mr. O'Hara, basically talks as if basically he's viewing Somali Americans in the lens of law enforcement. And this is totally wrong. And by the way...
Well, I mean, he's just telling the truth. He's saying, listen, there's a lot of juvenile crime that is growing because of these groups of East African kids, right? That's his quote, right? Groups of East African kids are coming from surrounding communities, and not just one community, kind of all over the place. He's essentially called it for what it is. He's saying, listen, hey, there's a problem. Hey, there's a problem with crime. There's a problem with chaos. And you got to call it out for what it is. You know?
We tried this, right? Minneapolis, of all places, really? You want to go there again? George Floyd, did you forget that? Right? Stereotyping people, killing them, right? For until the country came almost on the brink of civil war or breakup. And you want to do this again?
I don't know what this has to do with what Ron DeSantis is talking about, right? Bringing up George Floyd is just an emotional deflection from the overall argument, which is that, hey, a lot of these people are coming to the country, they're not assimilating, and they're causing problems. So therefore, we need to reevaluate legal immigration.
And I want to talk to the Somali Americans in that city, right? You, especially those of you who are in power, place of power, or business owners, you need to hold them accountable. Because imagine the police chief of the city of Miami, right, or Fort Lauderdale, or any of those southern Florida cities, if they said something like that about the Cuban American community, would they still hold that job? Or let's say this.
Well, I mean, again, the Cuban American community is a little bit different, right? I think they have a different set of values than the communities that we're talking about here today. And I think that's the point that these people are missing, okay? Nobody's saying that, hey, we can't have any legal immigrants come from other countries, but again, they have to be thoroughly vetted and they have to be evaluated to make sure that they're going to fit into what we want, right? The type of culture that we want into this country. And that is the main point.
If someone from Laredo, Texas said that about the Mexicans, maybe they do that. That's a different story. That's not a good example. Because they probably say those things. They're crazy in Texas. But the point is, if you are going to be trying to create law and order and safety and all of that for people, you cannot look at their children and the entire community in the same brush. Somali Americans here are largely law-abiding, largely, right? They're doing all kinds of things from fire department to police officers. They're patrolling his own officers.
And that's great. That's awesome. If they're law-abiding, they're paying taxes, they're doing the right thing, they don't have anything to worry about, right, for the most part. But a lot of them, again, some of them, they do have something to worry about because, hey, they're not following the rules, right? And they're taking advantage of the system. And they're living on welfare, right? And, we have to do something about that. That's not something that we can really tolerate.
Our Somalis are represented in there. So I don't understand what he's trying to say. But it doesn't look good. Whatever that's coming out of Minneapolis doesn't sound good. And definitely what's coming out of Florida doesn't look good. So we got to push back. We got to push back against these very racist. They're not even hiding their intentions. We're here to stay. Whether we're 10 millions or 5 millions or 100,000, we're here to stay. Peace.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. We're going to see, right? We're going to see what happens. But it seems to me that President Trump is serious when it comes to this new crackdown. It is long overdue. And I'm wishing the president the best, right, when it comes to actually getting stuff done. Expect there's a lot of lawsuits that are going to be coming. A lot of woke judges are going to try to intervene, and they're going to try to stop the president. So we've already been through this before. We know how it goes regardless. I think the president is moving in the right direction. And, there are going to be a lot of feelings hurt. There are going to be a lot of individuals that are going to be boo-hooing and crying. But I think, in my opinion, that it is necessary, right? It's necessary to evaluate all of the individuals that were let into the country under Joe Biden, because clearly there are issues, right? There are a lot of issues, and those issues must be addressed. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.
He's 64 years old, and he was homeless.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, this is happening. Liberal media is silent over thugs lynching an elderly white man for dissing their homies. You got Rob Berlin. He's 64 years old. He's homeless. These bunch of black teenagers basically lynched him, hanged him, just for disrespecting one of their homies. And this has happened 1 day ago, but you don't hear about the media saying it. But it's coming out now because they cannot hide it. Now that shows Black Chicago chili greeters jumped at the EBT community customer rejected to a long wait time. I get that video as well. And I'm sorry if it's not one video out of the single video. It's one video on top of another video, and then a video on top of another video. I'm making it long that way and everything. I'm trying to cut it down. I'm trying to get multiple videos out, 2 at a time on the same thing, okay? So if it seems kind of long, then oh well. My bad, but into the video we go, shall we?
at the time of his. An interesting thing about this man was that he narrowly escaped the 9/11 disaster, only to be unalived by 3 teenagers on the streets of Jacksonville, Florida. Yes, you heard me right earlier. Teenagers unalived this 64-year-old man. Justin Curry, who was just 13, who was actually 12 years old at the night of the beating, Arcavian Lacey, who was 19 years old, and Robert Pope, who was 16 years old. They have all been arrested and indicted for murder. This is crazy. This is like the 3rd incident I've heard of teenagers attacking grown adults.
So on October 19th in downtown Jacksonville, Florida, there was a guy named Roger Borkin who was homeless. He was 64 years old, and he got jumped by these 3 teenagers who stomped him out to death practically. There was a pool of blood found around his head when the cops showed up, and there was a trail all the way down the sidewalk. And they only said it was because he disrespected their dead homies, and they didn't really comment about it further. Died 4 days later of his injuries. They actually came back 20 minutes later after doing this to rummage through his backpack and beat him some more. They took his shit. One kid was 12 years old at the time of this, 17 and 19. And my first thought is, what kind of parents do you have? What kind of parents are these that are just letting their kids roam around and think that this is okay? That you can go do this, you can be a person like this out in the world where you can take somebody's life because they're lesser, you think they're lesser than you.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about what I can only describe as a modern day lynching. And it is a modern day lynching that doesn't fit the narrative that the mainstream liberal media wants to put out there about lynchings that, you know, are very rare in 2025. Again, especially the type of lynchings that the mainstream liberal media looks for. Okay, most of the time when the mainstream liberal media is talking about a lynching, it's likely a race hoax, right? It's likely not real, right? It's likely made up. Like, for example, we talked about the Trey Reed situation, the young black man from Mississippi that was found hanging from a tree, and authorities, including all the black people involved, the black authorities involved, the police chief, the coroner that conducted the autopsy, they all said that there's no foul play. This is a suicide. But the black activists in the mainstream liberal media, they said, no, this guy was lynched, right? A white mob must have lynched this young man because it is impossible for a young black man to hang himself, right? Because apparently black men don't commit suicide by hanging, right? Black men don't hang themselves. This is what they said all over social media. Ben Crump got involved. Colin Kaepernick got involved. And Kaepernick conducted his own autopsy, right? A second autopsy, because apparently the autopsy that was done by the black coroner was racist. So Colin Kaepernick and his team did their own autopsy.
One of our key initiatives now is our autopsy initiative. That came out a little over 18 months ago that got launched. And that gives free secondary autopsies to any families of loved ones who have been killed in a police-related death. And the key factor there in police-related deaths is oftentimes the sheriff is the coroner, or the pathologist who is doing the autopsy, they have a relationship with the police department. So there's a lot of bias in the autopsies. So we have independent pathologists that families can come to us, and we will pay for the autopsy for them. So no cost to the family. And they'll be able to get a second autopsy to get clarity on what happened. And there are scenarios that what the first autopsy was, that's what happened. We've also had a lot of scenarios that have led to lawsuits. We've had scenarios where we were supposed to be doing the second autopsy, and a first autopsy was never done, even though it was reported to be done. Wow.
Yeah, but lo and behold, in this case, surprise, 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 they did a second autopsy, and they still have not released the results. It has been almost 2 months since the second autopsy. The first autopsy only took, like a week, right? The second autopsy, done by Kaepernick, for whatever reason, isn't done yet. But the reality is that it is done. They just refuse to release the results because the results don't fit the narrative that they put out there, which is that Trey Reed was lynched by a white mob, right? The overwhelming evidence is that he committed suicide, but the black activists refuse to believe that, right? And they want to prop up fake lynching stories like that one, while at the same time ignoring real lynching stories like the one that we're going to talk about here that doesn't fit the narrative, involving 3 thugs, okay, that decided to beat a man to death, a 64-year-old man, and I want to talk about it because it's stories like this that fly under the radar, okay, when we know that if the situation or the racial roles were reversed, then this would be the #1 news story in the country if the roles were reversed racially. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Tonight, 3 teenagers are now charged in a brutal attack that left a man dead in downtown Jacksonville. They are just 13, 16, and 19 years old. And we are naming the juvenile suspects because of the nature of their charges, and they will all be tried as adults. Our Cindy Deshawn has been digging through arrest reports tonight to uncover what happened in the hours leading up to this savage attack, Sydney.
Yeah, Heather, and investigators say the man who was homeless was beaten not once, not twice, but 3 times, all within about an hour downtown.
Wow.
A witness spoke up and police found the 3 teens within just hours of the attack. 3 young suspects, just 13, 16, and 19 years old, now charged as adults in the murder of 64-year-old Roger Borkham, 13-year-old Justin Curry, who was indicted by a Duval County grand jury, 16-year-old Robert Pope, and 19-year-old Markavian Lacey. Detectives say Borkham, who was homeless, was beaten 3 separate times over the course of a little more than an hour back on October 19th. An arrest report revealing officers were called to 110 North Hogan Street. And when they arrived, they found Borkham unconscious near a doorway, blood pooling on the sidewalk. First responders took him to the hospital, and Borkham died 4 days later. The medical examiner ruling his death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma. The arrest report reveals a witness told police he saw 3 teenagers kicking and stomping the victim before...
Notice how the media didn't read this verbatim, right? He advised he observed 3 young black males kicking and stomping the victim. Amazing how the media leaves that out. At the very least, they did show the pictures and the names. They also should have included the parents' names as well, too, and their pictures, right? I think what you got to start doing when it comes to these thugs, okay, these agents of chaos committing acts of violence like this, murders, you got to start putting up pictures of the parents too, right? Go ahead and show the world who raised animals, right? The animals that raised the animals, right? That's what we have to start doing, okay? Show the parents as well too, and be accurate with the description, because we know, again, if the racial roles were reversed, the media will have no problems reading verbatim the description of the suspects.
Running off. Hours after the attack, officers located the suspects half a mile away and took them into custody. Police say they also linked the suspects to a separate incident that night, a robbery on Forsyth Street. Surveillance video obtained by detectives shows the suspects approaching the victim multiple times. Video captures the group beating the victim, rummaging through his backpack, and returning to the scene to attack him again. State Attorney Melissa Nelson says the juvenile justice system is neither designed nor equipped to handle offenders or offenses of this magnitude. By bringing the case into circuit court, Nelson says authorities can ensure the level of accountability, supervision, and judicial oversight that the facts demand. Now, the sheriff's office is also calling the case a heartbreaking reminder of how young some offenders have become. They urge parents to get involved in their child's lives and make use of resources to keep kids out of trouble before it's too late. Heather.
So young.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, apparently, the reason why this happened, the motive behind it, allegedly, is that one of the suspects reportedly told investigators the attack was triggered because Borkham had dissed their dead homies. Huh. Yeah. Again, this is a modern day lynching. That's what it was. It was a lynching. And all of the individuals that were so passionate about, oh, lynching is so terrible. We have to stop this type of violence. This is unacceptable. All of those people are silent. They don't have anything to say about a real lynching, an actual lynching that was committed by these 3 thugs. And that's the problem. That's the problem with our media. It's stories like this that go under the radar that they don't want to cover. They refuse to talk about. But we all know if these were 3 white men.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat an elderly black man to death in the middle of the street, in the middle of a downtown, a major city. Beat him to death 3 times. This will be everywhere. It will be the #1 national news story. We'll be having the race conversation. Oh, it's so terrible for black people in this country. And black people got to get up every day and worry about being lynched and attacked based off their skin color. Right? It wouldn't even matter what the motivation is. It wouldn't even matter if it was racially motivated. Just the fact that you would have 3 white guys beating to death a black person, that would just prompt a national conversation, period. Doesn't matter the motivation. But when you have 3 black thugs beating an elderly white man to death because he, quote unquote, dissed their dead homies, silence, crickets. You don't hear anything. It's just a local news story. It barely. No national attention whatsoever. And like I said, this is the problem. This is the problem. This is the issue. But it's stuff like this that's much more prevalent than what the media wants people to be concerned about, right? This is so much more prevalent. Stories like this happen all the time. But because it doesn't fit the narrative that they want, they don't talk about it. They don't want to cover it. I talked about the lynching of Mahogany Jackson, a young black woman from Alabama that was lynched by, you know who? Her own people. Where's the national news media? Nowhere to be found. Where were the race hustlers at? Nowhere to be found. Where were the black liberals? Nowhere to be found. Where was Roland Martin? Nowhere to be found. Where was the Amazing Bottom? Nowhere to be found. Where was any of these people that claim they love black folks so much? Protect black women. Where were they at? Nowhere to be found. They didn't give a shit. Because she was lynched by black people. When black people do the lynching, all of a sudden lynching don't matter. They don't care. It's not a national news story. We don't even worry about lynching in this country when it's black folks doing it. When it's these black thugs doing it. But let there be a situation where you don't even have evidence that a white person committed the crime. But if they have any, just small reason to believe, right? Any reason whatsoever to believe it could have been a white person that did it, it's a national news story. It's all over TikTok. This is a travesty. This is injustice. We must find the killer. But all the evidence points to the fact that, hey, Trey Reed committed suicide. He wasn't lynched. But again, in their minds, they made up something that wasn't there. But when you have an actual lynching right in front of your face, all the facts are there, all the evidence is there, his own video, crickets, right? Crickets, because the suspects are black. Because the suspects aren't white. They don't care. Doesn't matter. So, let's talk a little bit more here about the victim. Again, Roger Borkham, 64 years old, was homeless. Again, where are all the pro-homeless activists at, right? Where are all the liberals that love homeless people so much that say, hey, this type of violence shouldn't happen to homeless folks? Where are those people at, right? Living on the streets of downtown Jacksonville at the time of the attack. According to his obituary, Borkham, quote, narrowly escaped death when a consulting job ended in late July 2001, working on the 77th floor of Tower 1 at the World Trade Center. Borkham was laid off just 2 months before the 9/11 attacks, which at the time may have spared his life. Oh, I'm pretty sure that's traumatic. And apparently he also lost his wife, Celeste Borkham, in 2009 while she was on a humanitarian visit to Africa, his obit said, calling it, quote, untimely, but without giving details on how she died. Yeah, so, again, just all around tragic story. My thoughts and prayers are with the family of this individual. I'm not sure exactly how involved his family was in his life, or if he has kids or extended family or loved ones. I mean, he was on the street, he was homeless apparently, so he probably was dealing with hard times. Okay, probably had a pretty difficult life, and this is a tragic way for it to end, right? It's stories like this that are extremely sad, and they deserve coverage, right? These stories deserve a national conversation because stuff like this is happening all over the country where we have these young, violent teenagers committing acts of violence, beating people to death. This is what they're doing. And it's happening all over the country. But yet, we're not talking about it enough. We're not bringing attention to this problem because of the fact that the media doesn't want to highlight the pattern, right? The demographic pattern of the suspects who continue to engage in these violent acts. And that's the problem. That is a huge, huge, huge problem in this country. And until we acknowledge it, until we start holding these individuals accountable to the fullest extent of the law, right? In the case of Florida, hopefully these individuals will be held accountable, again, to the fullest extent allowable in Florida. Then, you're going to continue to see it. And we have to also hold the parents accountable. Where are the parents? Who are the parents? We need to know. The world should know who raised these animals. Who raised them? Who raised them? And they should be held accountable too. The parents should be held accountable as well. Because there's no way that a responsible parent could raise kids who would commit acts of violence like this. Just no way. So, again, this is a sad, sad situation. But, again, my thoughts and prayers are with the family of the victim. And I'm hoping that these thugs are punished to the fullest extent of the law. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.